Aftermarket car audio systems sound terrible, and I'm going to tell you why. Has this ever happened to you? You're sitting at a red light and a big, loud, obnoxious car comes rolling up beside you, shaking the ground, body panels vibrating, just generally sounding like crap. Well, this is the first reason why car audio tends to sound bad. We call it sample bias. You see, there are two types of car audio enthusiasts. There's audiophiles and there's bassheads. And there's some overlap between the two. If an audiophile with a custom radio pulls up beside you at a red light, you're never going to notice the $10,000 custom stereo hidden in the car. That radio's got the ability to play loud, but the driver's not going to try to show it off. And the sound is going to be really well balanced. It's not going to be a bass-heavy system, and the music they listen to probably isn't bass-heavy either. And the car is not going to rattle because this kind of stereo nut uses vibration dampening materials to make sure that nothing vibrates, because vibration sounds bad and they're looking for a good quality sound. The thing to remember is that the average person is never going to experience a radio like that. Maybe if they have a friend who's into audio, maybe if they seek it out and go learn what it sounds like, they might, but the average person just is never going to encounter a really great sounding car stereo. And this is what I mean by sample bias. The sample is not random because the audiophiles don't show up in the sample, meaning they're right beside you in traffic and you don't know because you can't hear their car rattling and they're not trying to shake your mirrors. So what does show up in the sample? What shows up in the sample are bassheads. These are the people that love that earth-shattering, ground-shaking, break the windshield out kind of bass. It's a loud car. It shakes the ground and body panels vibrate like crazy. And a lot of time those vibrating body panels drown out any actual sound. Now that car might sound great inside, but on the outside, all you hear is and it sounds like crap, okay? And that's another factor to keep in mind. You only hear what it sounds like on the outside of the car. So you really can't trust your own senses when assessing the quality of that radio. You only notice loud cars with vibrating body panels and you only hear them from the outside. Here's what you do. You keep an ear out for a really loud car that you can hear and feel, but don't hear any vibrations. That's going to be a great sounding car on the inside. You want to pull that guy over and ask to hear his radio. It's going to sound amazing. Now, the second thing to remember is that there's a huge amount of what we call selection bias or self-selection bias. Some might call it adverse selection. A lot of people get into car audio because they're all about that bass. Now, if they stay in the hobby any length of time, they tend to mature and migrate to a more audiophile system, but they still like something that's got the power to really shake things up if they're in the mood. This means, due to the fact that people who like that heavy bass sound tend to be attracted to the car audio hobby, there are going to be a few more bass heads. These tend to be young guys in their teens and 20s who kind of like to show off. So that's two things to keep in mind. The third point is that getting loud is kind of expensive, so people cut corners. These young guys that comprise most of the bass heads, unless they've got rich parents that are willing to indulge them with nice toys, they don't have any money, okay? That 16-year-old kid driving a 20-year-old car and slinging burgers at minimum wage can't afford to pay for a professional install. He's going to have to figure out how to do it all himself. And if you think about it, that's admirable. You should give him some respect for having the gumption to pay for his hobby himself and do his own work and save up to buy the equipment that he can afford. He's going to view things like sound dampening materials that stop the vibrations as needless obstacles towards his goal, which is dropping that bass and dropping it so hard you can feel it into the next car over. He can't buy the best brand name gear, and he doesn't know how to set it up properly to get sound quality. He's probably never even heard a quality system. All he understands is loud, and he sets the system up incorrectly, and it sounds like crap, but it's loud, and that's what he wants. And so, hey, whatever, okay? These 3 points bring me to my first central thesis. You'll notice that none of these points are based on any technical information about car audio. It boils down to two things: user error and a statistical bias that leads to an incorrect conclusion. All aftermarket car audio does not suck. Just like some people are tall and some people are short, most people are in between. Some aftermarket car audio sounds fantastic, and some of it sucks, and most of it is in between. By an accident of probability and statistics, you mostly hear loud radios built by people that just want to show off and typically have to cut corners to get the volume they want at a cost they can afford. If you think car audio sounds like crap, it's because you've only experienced crappy car audio. So here's the thing. If you like car audio, you're probably watching this video. And if you think car audio sucks, you're probably not watching this video. So if you're into car audio, why don't you share this with that friend or family member that thinks car audio sounds bad? Because they're the people who need to be educated and need to understand that car audio can be amazing, can sound really great, and most of what you hear is just a biased sample where you only hear the ones that sound bad. That's some pretty reasonable logic. Share this with your friends, share this with your family, share it with those doubters and haters and those people who don't understand your obsession and interest and excitement with car audio. I personally like car audio because it takes some really good engineering, math, thinking, and problem-solving skills, technical skills, skills in fabricating, and skills in design and layout to make it sound really good. And those kind of challenges excite me. I enjoy that kind of challenge. I enjoy my mind being challenged. How can I get this thing to sound as good as possible within the budget that I've got in front of me? So share this with someone who thinks car audio actually does suck. Maybe we can change their mind. Having said all that, here's my second central thesis. It's really hard to make a car sound great. And here are some reasons why. The first reason why, all car audio is custom. In a home audio environment, all you have to do is plug in a few wires. It's relatively easy to get great sound with just off-the-shelf consumer-level gear. It can be a lot more complicated, but it doesn't have to be. But every car audio setup is a custom aftermarket installation that requires some modification of the vehicle. You want some new speakers because your old speakers are blown and sound like crap? You've got to remove interior door panels and install brackets and adapters to make sure the new speaker will fit. You got to be very careful about the type of speakers you pick to make sure that they fit, that they're not too deep or don't stick out too far. If you want to add tweeters to a car that didn't come with tweeters from the factory, you're going to have to cut holes somewhere in the interior trim of the car. If you want to replace the radio, you'll need to remove and replace small sections of the dash and purchase specialized harnesses that often cost as much as the radio itself. Then you've got to splice those wires off the radio into that harness. If you want to add a subwoofer, you need to remove even more panels, and then you've got to snake wire from the battery through the firewall and into the trunk, and do so in a way that won't cause a fire. You need specialized meters to set up an amplifier properly. It ain't easy and it ain't cheap. If you've never done it before, you're going to need help. You're going to need someone to show you how it's done. At the very least, you're going to need to watch hours of YouTube videos to figure out how to get the car apart. So all car audio is custom, so that automatically kicks up the difficulty several orders of magnitude. The second thing is that car audio amplifiers have a gain control. This is a feature that most home equipment just doesn't have because home equipment is designed to plug into the wall and hook the speakers up and just play. You'll find gain controls on professional equipment. If you have a multi-room amplifier for your multi-room sound system that you paid someone to come put into your house, it's probably got a gain control on it. That's where you tend to find gain controls in the home. But your typical consumer gear that you can just go buy is not going to have a gain control on it. Now, the gain control has a very specific use. It's designed to make sure that all of the amplifiers in your car audio system are volume matched appropriately. A professional shop can set this up for you with specialized tools. You can buy some of these tools for yourself and do it, but that does cost money. Before these tools were common, professional installers learned how to set these by ear. But if you're inexperienced and don't have the proper tools, it's easy to abuse this feature by cranking it up to get more power. With that extra power, you get clipping, which is a form of distortion. If you want loud, you're going to love that. But clipping sounds horrible and it's eventually going to cause things to break. And when you break things, they sound horrible. On to my next point. Cars rattle. And bass makes that worse. The solution is a product called constrained layer dampening, or CLD. It's basically this heavy aluminum and butyl rubber material that you stick to panels that are prone to rattle, and much of that rattle is going to go away. You can wrap parts in felt tape so they don't make noise when they rub against each other. A lot of tricks you can do in order to get rid of all those rattles that are in a car. It can be very expensive and time-consuming to hunt down all those rattles. In my opinion, if you're going to drop a lot of money on aftermarket car audio equipment, you'd be better off to spend a little bit less on the speakers and the amplifiers and these kind of things and divert some of that budget to sound dampening materials. In a car environment, the quality of the installation is just as important, if not more, than the quality of the gear. But here's a free tip. Keep the interior of your car clean. Trash and loose change add to the rattle problem, and keeping a clean car is the cheapest way to knock out the rattles. Next, when you're in a car, you're sitting in the wrong place. Even today, in our world of 7.1 and 11.2 surround sound receivers, stereo sound is still considered to be the gold standard for sound quality. The stereo effect works best when you're facing two speakers and sitting equal distance between them. You're halfway between the two speakers. And you can make great stereo sound with relatively inexpensive home speakers simply by putting them the same distance away from the listener, which is not how it works in a car. In a car, you're sitting beside a door, and the speaker is probably in the door, which means you've got one speaker really close to you and one speaker really far from you. And no matter where you're sitting in the car, it's a different speaker that's close and a different one that's far away. And this means that the stereo sound hits your ears at the wrong time and you lose the stereo effect. Now, this can be corrected with a lot of different ways. You can tweak equalization. You can modify speaker mounting locations. You can use a time delay process through a digital signal processor. But these things can really get expensive and can really start to add up. And so oftentimes, these kind of things are ignored. And finally, reflections. When sound hits a hard surface, it's going to bounce off and it's going to reflect and going to come back to your ears. Cars are full of these types of surfaces and they stick out at all kind of weird angles. Your windshield glass, your side window glass, your dashes, rear console, front console, all these things in the car that are made out of things like hard plastic are all just ways for sound to bounce off at odd and weird angles and bounce back to your ears in weird ways that are going to degrade the quality of the listening experience. Now, the casual listener is unlikely to notice or care. So this is the kind of thing you're typically only worried about if you are an audiophile or you're planning to enter some kind of sound quality competition. It can be fixed with equalization. It can be fixed by tweaking the locations of the speakers. It can be fixed by covering hard surfaces with something soft. Putting a piece of carpet up on the dash, for example, might help with that. So there are ways we can get around that, but for the most part, they're not really worth the trouble for the typical listener. So yeah, it's hard to make car audio sound really good because there's just so many things going on in a car that make it hard for a car to sound good. But that doesn't mean car audio sucks. Car audio doesn't have to suck. A well-planned, well-executed car audio system is going to sound amazing, bring you lots of joy and pleasure, and make the drive a lot better. You just have to plan it out a little bit better. And remember that just because the guy next to you is blaring the radio and the car's vibrating like crazy, that doesn't mean that your radio has to sound bad if you dive into car audio. I hope this video has been helpful. If you're a car audio guru, a car audio guy or gal, you're really deep into car audio, share this video with somebody. Because the reality is that it's more about the perception than anything else.